one of the things that I think is important is to understand the concept of a hologram, right? In a hologram, you can look at any tiny, basically this is the concept I'm getting at. You look at any tiny little part of a hologram, you can see the whole thing, right? You look at, one could argue when it comes to the entire universe, right? Look at an atom. An atom looks exactly like a planetary system where there's a parent star and there are satellites revolving around it. Or look at the Earth, then you've got or a planet and you see satellites revolving around it, whether it's a moon or whatever, right? You look at the small thing and you can see the big picture. That's the point I'm getting. And throughout the universe that we live in, you can continually see that. So my argument is, there, of course, when it comes to the neocons, there is a big picture, and the big picture is world domination. The big picture is quite simply that from their perspective, after the Soviet Union collapsed in 2001, they had complete control of the world. They can never let that go. That's the kind of thing like the Nazi mentality, right? The 1,000 years, the Third Reich, the Third Reich forever rule, things of that nature. That concept, that crazy concept that maniacs get that say, I must rule the earth forever. It's the need to be a kind of a god, right? That man wants to be a god and man wants to rule the earth forever. And so that's where the neocons are. Basically, they want world domination for all eternity. Now, there's some holes in that theory, but we're not going to get into that just yet, because we're going to get into the Ukraine conflict and how that fits in. If you only talk about the Ukraine conflict as though it's isolated, you're missing the mark. If you look at the Ukraine conflict as one of the fronts in the global war for domination, you get a clearer understanding. And not only that, when you look at the Ukraine conflict, you can evaluate what's going on in the Ukraine conflict, like in the same way that you look at an atom and you can see the same thing that you can see when you look at a planetary system, right? You look at the Ukraine conflict and you can see the same thing in the global war for domination that the NEOCON project actually manifests in Ukraine. So what's happening here? One of the biggest part, the most important aspect of the Ukraine conflict, believe it or not, is not in Ukraine. It's not in Ukraine, because the Ukraine conflict is about coalitions, right? It has really become about coalitions. What's happening on the ground, oddly enough, in this particular conflict, oftentimes is secondary to what's happening outside of Ukraine, to the political machinations outside of Ukraine, the industrial machinations outside of Ukraine. Okay, a perfect example, the issue of ammunition, right? That's not what's happening inside of Ukraine. Ukraine is a result. Ukraine is where we see the results of these other machinations, or part of the results. So let's start with just ammunition alone. The discussion about the Ukraine conflict very much now is about the industrial capacity of the U.S. and its satellite colonies to produce enough ammunition to maintain the needs of the Ukrainian military, right? The proxy military that they have there. The ability, how about this? Because the ability, the West says we have lots of capital. And why does the West have the West? We say the West, it's the U.S. empire. So the U.S. empire says we have lots of capital. Why do we have lots of capital? For two reasons. Number one, we can print all that we want because the dollar is the reserve currency. Number two, because we have all these vassal states and we can just tell them, give up your money and shut up, and they'll do it, no matter how much their people suffer. The U.S. can go to the UK, they can go to France, Germany, the rest of them, and say, we don't care if your damn people starve to death, if every last one of them are skeletons, it doesn't matter. We want all of your money to go into the Ukraine conflict. And because the United States has taken complete control at this point of the U.S. Of all of its allies and vassals, the quisling traders that run those countries are going to say yes. You know, one of the things a lot of people don't realize about South Korea is, and this is a perfect example, in times of war, the United States, and I believe it's in the South Korean Constitution, but at any rate, it's written, it's an agreement. At least it's a memo, it's an understanding. And that is, in times of war, the United States takes control of the South Korean military. So let me ask you this: does South Korea have independence and sovereignty if there's a war, which the United States would start? So the United States can start a war and then take control of the South Korean military to prosecute that war, even if the South Koreans don't care. If they don't want it, if it doesn't benefit them, if they're opposed to it, it doesn't matter. The agreement says if there's a war going on, the U.S. takes control of the South Korean military. So there's no independence there, right? As we can see in Philippines, as we can see in Japan, no independence. The United States comes in and says to Japan, you will take your money and you will purchase what we tell you to purchase, and you will put it where we tell you to put it to go against China, which is your #1 trading partner, which will wipe out your economy. Everything you have to do, economic and physical suicide, if we tell you to do it, right? That's part of being a king. So the United States can it can print money, and it can coerce its vassals based on the fact that they're all run by traders into accessing all of their money. So we have a war with Russia. Really, you've got a war of Western capital versus Russia. Their thing is, we got lots of money and we can spend it in Ukraine to go to war with Russia. We can take our capital, we can convert that capital into weaponry, we can then send that weaponry to Ukraine. Boom. So their belief was in money. We got money, as long as we can convert that money into weaponry, boom, we can fight Russia. And because we can print money and we can suck our vassals dry, it doesn't matter. Problem they have is this: there is an issue when you have to take that money and use your industrial capacity to convert it into the needed weaponry. Therein lies the problem. The U.S. empire has deindustrialized, #1. #2, the U.S. empire has gone from an industrial society to a capitalized society, to a financialized society, right? So if everything is made, right, if everything is made for capital, for profit, that means in neoliberalism, everything's made for profit. Nothing is made. Remember, World War II, the government in the U.S. took over a lot of industry, and a lot of that industry, that military stuff wasn't made for profit. If it was a minor, next to nothing profit. That stuff was made to be used to go to war in Japan and Germany. Now it's made for profit. So what you have is a couple of things. You have a lot of military products that don't work as advertised, because they weren't created to fight a war. They were created to make a profit. Like food, there are a lot of foods that you buy in the US. Most of the crap that we buy, it will kill you. It won't make you better. It won't make you healthier. It'll kill you. Why? Because it's not food. It is a product. It's not created for you to eat and for physical sustenance of your body. It's created to taste good. It's created to have a beautiful package. The allure to get you to buy it and buy more and taste it and eat it, it'll kill you. But it's not food anyway, it's a product. That goes in a financialized neoliberal society, that's everything. So the F-35, our feature, our cutting edge aircraft, according to the pilots, they call it a flying piano. It doesn't work as advertised. We're seeing that our anti-aircraft system, we're seeing so many things that was created by a military industrial complex doesn't work as advertised. Why? Because it was not created as a military weaponry. Everything was created as a product, and now that particular aspect of our society is manifesting itself in a major war that the United States has gotten into against a peer superpower. Okay, so I get to say all that to say this. So the war in Ukraine is the Western oligarchs converting their capital, however they get it, as we've said, into weaponry That's what they have to do. They have to take money because this is their capital. We got all this money. We can use this money to fight Russia, but we have to convert that money into weaponry. Therein lies the problem. They're now finding out that they don't have the industry to do that. So the NEOCON project for world domination, as they're finding out, at some point requires some level of competence, of some level of your economic system has to work for the things that you want it to work for. It can't just be a financialized magic asset-backed securities derivatives that uses economic magic to create a profit. At some point, it actually has to work. It has to be able to create things that work. The problem is this financialized neoliberal system doesn't create things that work anymore. It only creates things that make a giant product. So therefore, this quest for world domination that requires some level of competence, what we're seeing exposed in the Ukraine conflict is that level of competence no longer exists in a neoliberal economic environment. It's not required.